Orders of the day.
Ballot item number 54, private member's notice of motion number 24, Mr. Pettapiece.
The member for Perth-Wellington.
Thank you, Speaker. I move that, in the opinion of this House, the government should reevaluate policies that negatively affect residents of rural and small-town Ontario and are a source of growing frustration in rural communities, which are key to a strong, healthy province.
Good.
Mr. Pettapiece has moved private member's notice of motion number 24. Pursuant to Standing Order 98, the member has 12 minutes for his presentation.
Thank you, Speaker. The rural-urban divide has never been so clear. This was the headline in the Ontario Farmer, published today after the last provincial election. The article discussed how rural Ontario had just voted. This debate is not about election results. It's not about partisanship, and it's not about individual grievances or entitlements. It is not to diminish the importance of our cities or their challenges. They too are coping with higher taxes, higher hydro bills, and fewer jobs. This motion is about a sense among many who live in rural areas, in our towns and villages, and even in our small cities, that our concerns and aspirations are not being heard. This motion is a first step to address the rural-urban divide, which is wide and getting wider. It is a chance to discuss just a few of these issues contributing to that divide. Some of the issues we hear about most often are the Green Energy Act and wind turbines in particular, the government's decision to end the Slots at Racetrack program, the government's school transportation procurement policies, the unaffordable costs facing rural municipalities in implementing provincial regulations across multiple ministries, excess red tape facing small businesses and agriculture, skyrocketing hydro costs affecting key industries and key employers in rural Ontario, and the government's refusal to share gas tax revenues with small and rural municipalities. I hope this motion will allow my colleagues on all sides to contribute their ideas on how we can bridge the rural-urban divide, a goal that we should all share. Here's a sample of what the media has been saying. And quote, county councillors have called for a public meeting that asks all county residents, plus anyone else from rural Ontario, to discuss what they see as a war against them by urban areas and led by the provincial Liberal government of Dalton-McGuinty. That's from the Wellington Advertiser of May 4th, 2012. They need to bridge the rural-urban divide on wind turbines, a key producer in the province's Green Energy Act. Emerged as an overriding issue at the meeting attended by about 200 people from a broad sweep of southwestern Ontario. That's from the Stratford Beacon Herald, March 15, 2012. Municipal leaders also have expressed concerns. This summer, I met with municipal leaders from Perth-Wellington in Mount Forest, along with the leader of the official opposition. Municipal leaders told us that the province too often imposes unfair and unrealistic financial, regulatory, or environmental pressures on rural municipalities. The costs of maintaining provincial connecting links and the costs of complying with provincial source water protection laws have been expressed repeatedly. I'm sure other members have also heard these concerns from municipalities they represent. Municipal leaders in Perth-Wellington have taken a strong interest in this motion today. I'd like to share a few of their comments. I am grateful for their support, including the endorsement of the Township of Perth South Council. Councillor Dave Turton from the town of Minnow wrote, and he said, "You are right on the money when you say our municipalities are challenged with rural economies and trying to keep the industries we currently have with the high cost of hydro, water, and roads." Councillor Neil Driscoll from the Township of Mapleton said, "We in rural Ontario are tired of being the low-cost solution to big city problems." People who live in our cities, small and large, are also concerned. Councillor Kerry McManus of the City of Stratford cited lack of support for rail service and an agenda that will see prime farmland paved. I also want to share what Councillor John Nader from the municipality of West Perth had to say. As a rural councillors, we are not looking for charity from the provincial government. We are looking for a partner. The current Liberal government seems perfectly content to sit back and watch Ontario's breadbasket struggle in vain. I can tell you, Mr. Speaker, that Councillor Nader is not alone in this view. As a result, I believe, of many policies, as it is the result, I believe, of many policy decisions that this government has taken over many years. I want to return to some of the issues I mentioned earlier. Many times we've told this government about the divisions that its Green Energy Act has created in rural Ontario. And so it's just not a matter of rural versus urban. The Green Energy Act also has pitted neighbour against neighbour. Wind turbine proposals are tearing communities apart as never before. Anyone who has attended public meetings on these proposals will know all about that. Councillor Andy Nesh from the township of Mapleton had this to say about the Green Energy Act. Basically, I have difficulty with the province telling us, the local citizens, what is good for us via the creation of legislation and thus tying our collective hands. End of quote. By forcing municipalities to accept industrial wind farms even when there is an overwhelming local opposition, the province is telling rural Ontario that its views don't matter. But then the Premier adds insult to injury. He dismisses concerns of rural Ontario as NIMBYism. He says he won't tolerate NIMBYism. But of course, he does tolerate NIMBYism when seats are at risk. Not only does he tolerate it, but he wastes $190 million so far to cancel a power plant during an election. Unbelievable. A plant that his own government put in Mississauga. And he cancels another plant in Oakville, wasting hundreds of millions more dollars. That isn't just another example of unconscionable waste, and there have been many of those. It's an example of a government one standard for urban Ontario and quite another for rural Ontario. But rural Ontario is taking notice. It's not just the big examples of waste and mismanagement that rankle us. It's about the little things. It's about a government official in Toronto who, no matter what the issue, always seems to know better than municipal staff. It's about agencies like Impact, for example, which seems quick to produce glowing reports on improved service, but slow to respond to municipal concerns about delayed assessments, lost revenue, and homeowners facing massive catch-up tax bills. It's also about the permit denied for reasons no one can understand. It's about the general lack of understanding about the importance of agriculture, not just to our rural economies, but also to the entire provincial economy. It's about a government that doesn't understand and doesn't appear to care about the importance of the equine industry to our rural economies. If it did, it would not have cancelled the Slots at Racetrack program. That's right. And would not have done so with no consultation whatsoever from rural communities or the industry, and without so much as a credible economic analysis. Councillor Mike Tam from the municipality of West Perth tells us how important this industry really is. I am passionate about horse racing, he writes. Dalton and Dwight should go to Clinton on a Sunday and watch the hundreds of trucks and trailers roll into town in need of food and fuel, end quote. In May, I attended a public meeting organized by the County of Wellington to discuss the future of the industry. About 200 people attended. They shared personal stories about how the loss of the industry would affect them. With frustration and bitter disappointment, they called out this government for its lack of understanding of rural Ontario. They were outraged that the government would kill the horse racing industry, seemingly to support its intention to build large casinos in urban centres. Many see their own province waging a war against them. It's no wonder that we have a divide. It's about over-regulation. The Endangered Species Act, for example, is set up to protect animals, a worthy goal, no doubt, but in the process it can be a hardship for farmers by requiring them to set aside land the government is taking away from their income. Farmers tell me simply, if you want to use my farm as a parkland, you'd better pay admission. In fact, farmers have made huge strides to become more efficient and even more environmentally responsible.
That's right.
They're using more and more better technologies like GPS systems to avoid overspraying their crops. Many farmers are experimenting with biogas and other forms of clean energy. And in most cases, they are doing these things on their own without government mandates. Our municipalities are also taking leadership. The County of Wellington's Green Legacy Tree Planting Program is a perfect example. Trees for Mapleton, a partnership among local governments and community organizations to help farmers adapt to climate change, is another. And there are many more examples from Perth County as well. All of which is to say, Mr. Speaker, that there is hope. While there are still many challenges and many threats to our rural economies, there is reason for hope. Our communities are still strong. I believe they will withstand the challenges of today. Ultimately, they will survive and thrive. But that takes work. It requires all of us to listen, to acknowledge areas where the government must do better, and to do what we can to put rural Ontario on a sustainable footing. I'm grateful for the advice of Rob Hannon and Rob Black from the Rural Ontario Institute. They wrote to ask policymakers, politicians, and government staff to apply a rural lens on policy options being considered. They credit the government for, on occasion, recognizing the need for a different approach in rural areas on programming across many ministries. But they say we need to discuss the adequacy and scope of their implementation. Different parties may not always agree on all issues, but we don't have to agree in order to support my motion today. By supporting this motion, we are simply affirming the words posted on the website of the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs, that strong rural communities are key to a strong, healthy province.
Hear, hear.
And we acknowledge that the government should reevaluate policies that may be causing angst and frustration in rural communities. Make no mistake, there is plenty of that. One of my constituents said it best: rural Ontario desperately needs your help now. We are being broadsided by freight trains at every turn. Surely we can agree that the growing divide among urban and rural Ontario is not healthy. Surely we can agree that to bridge that divide, to move forward as one province, we need our entire province, rural, urban, north and south, to be successful.
Hear, hear.
I ask all members for their support on this motion. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you. Further debate? The member for Kenora Rainy